Hey, yo. It's Howard from Backstage Vintage Dyes. I'm at it again. I'm going to be doing a sheet today. It's actually a fitted sheet. I've got it right down here. I figured I'd just do a quick intro, and then I'm going to go over and tilt the camera a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to also go over here and do some sharing so other people can see. So hold on and we'll get started in 1 sec. All right. So, back at it at my studio. Did some rearranging, but I'm still, still a mess. It's all right. It's all right. Got a lot of orders, so I figured I'd take a little bit of time and do some live video. Why not? This is a order we're gonna do. This is a fitted sheet. So this is the dreaded fitted sheet. Lots of people are afraid to do fitted sheet because they're pain in the ass to fold. So, hey, I have a fitted sheet right here. All right, so this is the dreaded fitted sheet. This is a queen, right? And how the heck do you turn this into this, right? Well, really quick lesson on a fitted sheet, okay? I did not learn this from my mother. All right, so you take the corners, edges, bam, bam. You put them together, okay? Then you fold them into each other. Voila, okay? Like this. So you got a little point. Then you come out, you make sure that all of the material is kind of facing the same way. You go on the other end, and you get the corners lined up. And then you got it right here. Bam. Okay, so now you have a fitted sheet that's folded, and it's almost in a square. So now next thing I do, so I just go ahead like this and do that. And there's my point right there, okay? It's not defined yet, but I come up here, I go like this. I've got my edge right here. I've got the fitted part down here, okay? But I don't really want to worry about that. I do this, and now I basically have my square. So I'm gonna make a mandala I made a fold that is a 16 point, so it's basically fold in half and then make an airplane out of it. I do have some folding videos. I think I did the 6 and the 12 point star on a shirt that you can check out on YouTube. But I'm not gonna spend too much more time on this. I'm not folding this sheet here. I've got it right here. I'm gonna tie the sheet, right? So a lot of you have been asking about how I do my tying. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and set this down. I'm gonna go ahead and tweak this. All right. So here is what we are going to tie up. This is folded in about 16 points. So it's half, and then it's folded again, and it's folded again. I should have a pretty straight line to work with here with multiple points. And then on this side, I only have 2. Some people do accordion folds where they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that will create multiples on both sides. There's an argument that says that maybe you get some better lineage, but you guys have seen my lines, so I'm gonna stick with what works for me. All right, so, sorry, I'm gonna keep on tweaking this a little bit. Glad to see so many people here. I am kind of, if you want to comment, I am looking at the comments over here on my computer, so feel free to comment and ask any questions that you may have. All right, so tools. Pen. This is a good old Crayola washable marker that our kids use. Okay, and this is just a straight edge ruler right here. What I will do, especially with the fitted sheets, is I'll come in here and make sure that it's nice and straight, and the points and the folds are all touching. Okay, when you're folding a fitted sheet, so when you're folding a fitted sheet, you're gonna have this bunch of stuff down here, and you want to make sure that you're pulling the fabric underneath and kind of working it up so you don't end up with separated points. And it's frustrating when that happens. If I have separated material, I'll refold the sheet or whatever I'm working with. All right, so I'm using these hair clips to keep all of my folds in place. It's one of the ways I get such crisp designs. And this is something that Aaron Whalen kind of turned us on to in one of the groups. And you know what? It made just a huge difference all of a sudden. When you're working with any type of mandala and you're starting to tie it up, you start to lose the fold up here. So if you keep it nice and tight, you're not going to lose the fold, and it's going to be nice and uniform going up. All right, so I'm just going to check. Looks like we're good. Not many questions, which is cool. I can't see the questions in the groups, so if you want to ask a question, maybe just go directly to the feed. I'm going to turn it up just a tad. All right. All right, so a few things. I'm going to come up with a point here where I want to stop, okay? So I usually do this by figuring out where the edges are, and this is pretty easy because I've got an edge right here, which is the very underneath, okay? So in order to get the mandala sized correctly so I don't have a full-on wraparound on the sheet because it is a fitted sheet, I'm gonna do a little bit smaller of a mandala. Now, another tool of the trade is good old sinew. I have a vise back there with a screwdriver and a spool of sinew and a drill, and I just stick this on the drill and just zip it up, and away I go. So about every other day or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to kind of mark out the design. It's going to be a mandala, obviously. That's what I'm going to do. Now, I did post a picture of I think that was 6 or 8 point flower, which is half of this. So I wouldn't fold it quite this much. And then I would do more of a design within here, okay? So first thing I want to do is get a decent round circle or a decent lines marking my fabric where I kind of use to gauge how to get like a perfect circle. Okay, so what I do, and I'll pull this out a little bit here, is I'll put this and just put my finger down here, and then I draw out like this. It's not perfect, but it does work. And I'll do that a bunch of places within the fabric, the sheet. So I'm gonna just do that. And again, these are just guides for me as I tie this sheet up. One of the things in my opinion, about tie-dyeing and doing designs like this I'm not going to get out the ruler and measure a bunch of stuff because I kind of want it to flow how I'm feeling. And again, these are just for guides. I'm not really pinpointing anywhere. I'm going to start drawing lines out. Okay, so now I do have like one goal that I like to achieve with the design. I want to have the center point in the center of the sheet as much as possible. In order to do that, I need to have my last point on this side, which is the side with many folds. So I'm going to use one of these lines, maybe not exact. I'm going to use one of these lines to determine what my endpoint is. So I want a line coming up this way, and this is kind of going from down to up, so it'll be pointing that way. And you know, I can use the straight edge. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Or sometimes I'm going for a curved design, so that works as well. All right, so I think I'm happy with my point right about here. So I'm going to take this, just kind of mark it off, and go just make a line. And again, I'm not breaking out the straight edge. And when I tie this up, it takes on a life of its own. So this line may or may not be the line that I use. I may want it more defined as well. So another tip on getting symmetrical mandalas, and this will work with any mandala. And I just said I don't measure stuff, but if you want a symmetrical geometrical point that is the same size as, or the same angle as the entire mandala, you can bend the material up and bring it to an edge like this. So you're basically creating a straight line like that, and then you draw a line up like this, and you are going to get a, basically a symmetrical shape for your point. As you see here, it's a pretty dramatic point. So I don't generally do that. I may do that like up here, or but not up here. Kind of eats up too much of the shirt, or excuse me, the material. All right. Okay, so I don't generally draw out, well, I shouldn't say that. I'll draw like a straw man out, just basically a guide for myself. And again, I'm doing it more just eyeing it, and I'm using the lines that I made as a guide. Generally, these points from here to here are going to be shorter. This is the offset side of the mandala. So if you think of a point, okay, you're going to have in between the points, you're going to have, round out. So that's what this is here. All right, so again, I'm just kind of sketching out. Now I also have another goal when I'm doing this, is I want this point here, my first point after the dream catcher. I want the point to be symmetrical and match the top. So that one is also going to be a line that comes up to the multi-folded side. So I'll take that up right here. I've got a little wiggle room in here, which is totally cool. Bring that up a little bit more. Okay, so now that's basically what I've done. I've kind of drawn this out, starting at kind of at the top. And again, this is just going to be kind of used for guide purposes. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm using 5-gauge sinew. This is a dried sheet. It's been prepped. It's been washed in heavy-duty laundry detergent. The folding was actually done. I didn't record the folding. I do have a video on my YouTube channel that has the folding. I'll do another one of these, and we'll fold the shirt. We'll fold the sheet up as well. But yeah, that's a good question. So 5-gauge I get from the same source on Amazon, and it's really tight. This is washed and prepped. It is this is a 400 thread brushed cotton sheet. It's a Target sheet. We use Target sheets. We use the same sheets except they're patterned at home. So all right. So 400 washed, prepped, dried, soda ashed, spun, and then dried again. Now, what I'm going to try to do, if I remember this, is I'm going to do a soda ash wash after I'm all done dyeing this. I'm not going to do the dye session here. Maybe I'll do it this evening with you guys. You can watch. Okay. A little bit of some love on the material, a little bit of ironing, but not a lot. I did it right back here on the floor. Again, if you join late, I have another fitted sheet that I kind of showed how you get the points that you need. So if you want to rewind and see that or look at it another time, you can. All right, so this is a little bit odd for me. I'm going to tie it up. I'm going to actually have to shift over because of the way I tie. But let's go ahead. I'll do the best I can here. I'm going to flip this whole thing around. Actually, this should work. All right. And I'll try to get closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. Okay. So I've got multiple folds here and 2 folds there. It's okay. It's kind of like coming up here, but that's all right. I'm going to flip this over because that's just the way I usually start. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sinew. I'm going to wrap it 5 or 6 times. I'm going to pinch it. When I'm wrapping it, I'm pulling it tight 5 or 6 times. 90% of the time it won't slip out, but sometimes they do. All right, and then I'll pull it 1 or 2 more times. I'll take this guy. This guy's always a pain in the butt to start with. Sometimes I'll cut him off, but for now I'll just tie it up. So now I'm going to start working it. Here's a little bit of the magic. So what I do is I pull up and come down and just kind of circle it around like that. Okay? I pinch it and then I pull. So I have a pretty good defined point right to start with. So I'm going to pull it, and then I'm going to come down. Pull it. Generally, I will always pull up on the first pull. Pull up towards the point, okay? So now what you have is these points are almost touching. This one certainly is. And I want to run it all the way up, and I want it to touch as much as possible. So when you're wrapping these things, if you pull down, it's going to pull the material, it's going to pull the sinew away from the next fold. So then there's that. So now I've got a pretty good start to this dream catcher. I pull these things freaking tight. I'll show you another trick in a second that gets them even tighter. So now I'll just pull it, set it down, just yank. All right, so now I'm pretty good to go. Now here's an example. So if I'm on the down right here where I'm pointing down and I pull down, it's going to pull it away. So I'm going to go up one more and I'm going to pull it up. Okay, how do you get them so symmetrical? You keep everything flat. You know, best thing that ever happened to tie-dyeing is all of these tie-dye groups and learning about other people's techniques, and just you take snippets from comments and you just apply them and it like works. Somebody asked a question and Rob Norwood came in and he's like, tie them flat, use the table. I'm like, oh, okay, flat, use the table. And that way you end up when you're dyeing, and some of us have done this, when you end up with your little creatures that are all tied up and you've got things sticking up every other way, it's kind of hard to get, hard to dye. So if you keep it all flat and you keep your pieces flat, then it makes for dyeing a lot easier. So I'm wrapping these 2 to 3 times, and I usually come back a 4th time. All right. Gonna be making some long sleeve shirts after this. Got some XLs, some larges, I think a few 2XLs, a couple of dresses, some yogas. Got a lot to dye. That's good. So just for example, so this is pulling down. Show you what happens. Actually, it's pretty fine. It's not too bad. It does start to separate a little bit, but more noticeably if you're kind of doing it a lot. There's been some videos and tutorials where some people, and I've done this before, will do a wrap. So they'll go they'll wrap around the last one. So they'll go up, they'll wrap around, they'll come down, and they'll pull. It's kind of like tying a tie in a half Nelson or whatever it's called. You really half Windsor Nelson. You know, you really don't need to. Just thread it through and pull. This is kind of a good way to take out frustration and anger and stress. You know, because you're going, I hope that loser doesn't get in the presidency. You know, and stuff like that, right? It's like, kind of fun to use it as a stress release. And, you know, maybe a little bit of some arm conditioning. Jeez. All right, so how are we doing? We still got a little space ahead of us. But again, those are more of just some guidelines. Normally, I actually would have drawn it on this side because this is kind of the position that I do things in when I tie-dye. So I'm tying a pretty large sheet. It's going to go a lot quicker once I get to the end of this. I'm going to show you some tricks that will be pretty cool. All right, so I'm starting to get pretty separate, or pretty down the line. I like to have at least 10 to 12 point nubs here. Here it looks like I have more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so that's actually pretty good. You know, if you get them too big, they kind of take up a little bit more than I like, as far as the overall design and how much goes into the dream catcher part. All right. Okay, so I've got my dream catcher portion right here. A lot of people are very curious about how you get these tight lines. Something like that. That equals that. All right. So we're going to go up one more. We're going to pull it tight. One more up. And then I'm going to make a round, kind of circle around the whole thing. All right. Let's see how we're doing over here. We're actually pretty good. All right. All right, so for the circle part, which is what I'm going to do is draw a line. For the sake of the video, I'll draw a line. So basically, I just want a straight line across. And I've been doing this long enough to where I can go from here and understand what the angle is and kind of do it without the line. And I'll come up, and then this is where I'm not actually meeting the edge here because it's creating that space. Creates that dark negative space that I just dig. All right. All right, so that's the dream catcher, folks. It's right there. It is pretty tight. I'm pretty satisfied with this. So, that's awesome. So now let's go ahead and make our point. Okay, so I'm going to keep the sinew attached. And only because this angle is much better for me, I'm going to do the line. Now, I also like to come in once I'm done with a certain spot and readjust the material a little bit because it will, move around. And again, I keep things on, I keep things pinned to keep them in place as much as possible. Overall, this isn't as perfectly aligned as I want it to, but when you're dealing with scale on a queen sheet, it's a large piece, then a few inches are not going to matter too much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a line up. I'll make it pretty good, pretty decent sized line. You can make it straight, you can curve it, you can do, it all depends how you want to spin it up and tie it up. So now I do my end pieces a little bit different, or I should say my starting tips a little bit different than the rest of the material here. So what I do is I've got my line, kind of pull up and pinch, and I'm basically accordioning it, accordioning. I'm using an accordion fold, so it looks like that. So I've got my line kind of straightened up. I'm just pinching it over. You have this zigzag right here that's going on, and then I bring the sinew down and up. And again, I'm not following the line precisely, but I am trying to get right up to the top of there so there's no gap. And that's I'm not going to wrap it around either. Again, I just want to do it with the direction of the pull. So once I get it wrapped around once or twice, I'll put the whole thing in my hand. I've got the string right there. I just give it a little pull. I check it out. Yeah, this is pretty good. And then I pull it. Okay, now you see I'm still keeping the material in line and flat. This is huge when you're folding large tapestries. And I know many of you know that because there's some amazing artists that are out there. One of these days we're going to get a documentary going. Okay. So, we've got the dream catcher and the point. The points. So, yeah, I won't turn the camera. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working this out. Now, I do have guides drawn out on the other side, and I can come in and draw them out too, but I kind of do it a little bit more organically. So this gives you a pretty straight, simple angle for the next fold. And I'm going to start doing a similar fold throughout throughout these nubs that are the offset nubs. These aren't the top points or the corner points. They're the offset points. So I'm just going to make sure that my material's lined up, and I'll set it down. I'll pull it, wrap it around again, give it a good pull. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap it one more time, and I'm going to take some material and wrap it up. And I'm going to do this throughout the entire process. When you're doing this type of fold, you can get it to where the fold is going across from point to point. It leaves you with less of a area to die. So I'm learning to offset the nub a little bit more, so I have more of an area to die, and it also creates more of a negative space, because I'll generally use the offset sections as my negative space. So, you know, most of my dies have the reds, and then blues, purples, darker colors in the offsets. All right, so that's the second part. So we have a dream catcher. This is the circle that wraps around the dream catcher. This is the point off of the dream catcher, and this is my first offset. All right. Okay, so I have my offset. Next thing I'm going to do is my first major inline point. So when I say inline and offset, the inline is the straight and this way geometrically, and the offsets are the in-betweens. So again, I mentioned you could actually bend up. If I wanted to get this as a really cool defined line, I can bend up this way. Okay, what I'm doing is let me make sure I'm doing this right. I actually want to line up this way. We're just going to draw the line because it doesn't work quite the way I wanted it to. What I was trying to do was figure out how I could get a correct angle that matches the angle of the fold. So in this case, I'm just going to eye it. I'm starting at the top where that nub is right here, and I'm just kind of pulling it out. Now again, you can curve it and it's cool. I may do that on the last points. Okay, so cool thing about the sheets, you guys can see okay? Cool. Is I'm just gonna do an accordion fold with this material, and the material will kind of tell you where to start. So in this case, I have an area right there, and I'm kind of making sure that we're just aligned, and I'm going to add my stuff back. So I've got a dent in here. I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm going to try to make it as straight as possible. And a lot of times I just kind of hold it and fold it. so there we have it. You can see that all right. All right, so that is our first kind of point that's going to be symmetrical within outside the Dreamcatcher portion of the sheet. All right. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to bring the material up, or the sinew up. Again, I'm pulling it up against the other nub, and then I'm pulling it down, and I'm keeping pressure on it so it doesn't start to shift. This thing will shift all the way down if you're not careful. And again, and what I'm trying to do here too is keep these folds clean and sharp and symmetrical, so when it dies, it's nice and clean and symmetrical. Again, I'm going to be using, oops, that's actually all right because I wasn't too crazy about the way that happened. So I had a little bit of slippage down here, so I'm going to pull this up and do that again. Hope everybody's voted. Went yesterday. Perform the civic duty. Cast the vote. All right, so again, I want to try to keep this whole thing straight and nice and symmetrical and flat. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to wrap it one more time. I've already got some pressure on it, and I'm going to yank. I'm going to pull it. All right. So pretty happy with that. Okay, so I've got a couple of points there. Now I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between the sinew, and it'll expand out a little bit more too. One of the things that happens a lot is you focus on one side, which one side will always look better, no matter what, when you're tying. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get pinched material in between your folds. So I'm not diligent about it, but I kind of know the feel. So I don't check a ton, but you have to do that to make sure you're not pinching a bunch of material. All right. So now I'm going to do a second one. Okay. Just give it a little bit more. All right, so pretty good. This is nice and aligned. So good spacing of my little triangle here. This will come out pretty decently. All right, so I wrap everything around, pull it tight. Here's an example of pinched material, right? So I came in here and it starts to pinch out, right like that. So want to make sure that you align it and don't pinch it. All right. wants to do its own thing, so I'm gonna just leave it. Now the offsets are a lot easier because you just kind of follow the material on the line. So I could draw a line up here, but instead I'm just going to kind of just do it to my eye. I don't do the accordion fold on these, although you can. So I would just draw a line and accordion it up. But I want the designs to be more on the points. All right, so now I'm going to wrap this up, probably twice. It's not hard to pull and break this stuff. It's not easy either. Depends on what type of mood I'm in. Again, it's a good way to take your frustrations out, yanking on sinew. Okay, so what do we have so far? We have a dream catcher with the point right here is kind of the circle around the dream catcher. We have our points off of the dream catcher. We have an offset nub, is what we'll call it. Then we have a on point nub, and now we have another, another offset. And now we're gonna do a much more defined point, and we're gonna actually do more of an accordion fold up, because now we're starting to get into the material. I haven't been following my guides, but here they are. So, not doing too bad, I think. But, again, it's not an exact art. Okay, so I'm going to make a line and kind of just go over the humps here. And bring it out. Again, it's like the material kind of creates a divot right here, and I use that divot as a guide. And then this is much more of an accordion, typical accordion fold here. And I'm going to run it one past my line, and then this material gets folded up here. Under. Okay, so I'm kind of winding up my sinew here, which I didn't do before. This is a pretty defined line, though. All right, so now my sinew's already under here. I'm kind of pulling it out. Yeah, you can see that. Pulling it across this way. Let me swing around here. Give you maybe a little bit better view if I can. So I've got this in my hands. I'm gonna bring the other one up. And it's starting to lose its shape, so I'm gonna have to kind of pull it in again. you know, you have to kind of have patience on this and not be afraid to kind of create another starting point. In other words, you know, do a fold again. All right, so I think we're good now. Always keeping this up as close to the last point as I can, as much as possible, keeping it flat. Using my hand, pulling it tight. Okay, so this is my next point, and I've got a good accordion going here. So I'm going to keep that aligned and keep it nice and flat. Two or three, 4 times. Now I'm going to get closer here as I start wrapping it up, and it will separate a little bit, but I want to try to see if I can get a third point on here. All right. So when you get to the end, you got to watch out because it'll slip right off. So I'll keep that there, but that may be problematic. Okay, so we're still keeping everything nice and flat, keeping it on the table. You know, this looks pretty symmetrical. It's got your triangles and it's got your nubs. We're going to keep on going up. We're actually almost to the point where I want to check my spacing here. So I figure I'm going to come up to about here. So looking at this, kind of looking under and seeing where things start folding into the curve. What I'm going to do is 2 more. I'm going to do 1, and then I'm going to run the rest up. And then I'm just probably going to just twirl that up there and be done with it. So here I'm just taking past the most... Here I'm taking past most of the folds and just, actually, let's do something different. Let's flip this around. Let's look at our straight line here, okay? And let's create a straight line. And then the last point will be around on a circle, which you see in a lot of my mandalas as well, so. Let's do that. So I've got this as a guide here, but it's a little bit back farther than I want it. So let's draw out a quick line here. Just about where I would go anyways. actually, let's flip this over, make sure we're on our line. Okay, so I want to come out. I'm going to go on the line. It's not quite the way I would do it normally, but it's all right. All right, so this is going to give us that overall round end of the main mandala, and then the last tip will be following that circle. Again, I'm pressing it down. I'm pulling it as hard as I can without breaking it. This is a cool little spot right here when you do... Sorry. This is a cool little spot when you're doing the mandala circle around the end, because if you make it like the same color, the points is the same color, then it extends the point down into the offset section. Getting a little hot here in California. It's supposed to be like 90 today and like 60 by the weekend. All right, so now I'm going to make sure that I'm going to come in here and look at my lines. Okay, this guy is the guy that's on the end, and I'm not too worried about him. All right, so it's pretty good. This is going to be my last point. I want it to be defined as much as possible. All right, so that feels pretty good. And works almost perfectly to the line that I drew before, which is kind of cool. Again, if I wanted to make more of a flower design, I would come in here and I'd go out and kind of do that. I kind of go in between and do both. Let's see. Yeah. So let's see. All right, we'll give it a little bit. A little bit of an arch. The areas that you want to focus on when you're doing the folds are your endpoints. You want to keep your endpoints nice and clean. Again, I'm still using these guides as I work my way up, because it just keeps everything in place nice. All right, so I'm following this kind of squiggly line here. All right, so now I have something that looks like that. I'm following this line right here. I want to make sure that the material is not bunching up or doing anything crazy. This is a good angle because it's going to pull my material in like that. So pretty satisfied with that. I'm squeezing it nice and tight so I can like lift it up a little bit. You know, there'll be a gap right here, but when you pull everything tight, it actually pulls the gap in most of the time. A little bit. Come in here, make sure you're not doing anything stupid like wrapping up your guides. Don't be afraid to yank on this thing. All right, so there we have it. This is the last point on this queen fitted sheet. This is an order that I'm very happy to be doing. And it'll be matching a sheet that I did last week. I'm sorry for all of the shaking that's been going on. So there we have it. That's the last part of the point. Here, I'm going to come in here, do a little adjustment. All right, so that's the last part of the point right there. So, quick recap. We have the dream catcher. End of the dream catcher. The first offset point, this is actually the first point, and this is the first offset point. This is the second center point. This is the second offset, third center. This is the circle that will be encapsulating right here. And then this is the last point, okay? Basically something similar to this. I'll give you a better picture of it. This is the sheet that we're going to match up, though. All right, so what do we do with the rest of this sheet here? Okay, there's a number of things you can do with it. You can just wrap it up. You could accordion it up. What I like to do is just kind of go back and make sure that it is not super thick, and that there's not a bunch of creases and folds. Get it as flat as possible. All right, so pretty happy with that. I'm just going to kind of wrap this, the rest of this up, I think. Just in nubs. At this point, you are on the sides of the sheet and the bottom where you fold the sucker in. So there's really no need to spend a lot of time. So again, I try to keep things as flat as possible. And I'm just kind of wrapping it up like that. everything's nice and tight. Constantly kind of pulling this out. This is the main, right here is we're done with what you see on the sheet. Everything else is underneath. Please visit Backstage Vintage Dies on Facebook and Instagram and on YouTube. If you guys want cool stuff for for festivals, get one of my blankets. You're supporting a good cause. Me and my family. We're not quite ready to announce any charitable affiliations, but that will absolutely come. There's no way that I would start a business without giving back to someone. Maybe the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. Did a little event for Tree of Life. Unfortunately, didn't see too many sales, but that's a great cause as well. All right, so again, we're at the point where we're just wrapping up this, all of the corners and material and elastic. I also have another group that's called the Sunday Marketplace, and that is for small businesses and arts and crafts and hopefully lots of holiday sales. You know, Facebook has a marketplace and they're very specific, but there's really nothing global out there. So if I wanted to find some really cool global art, I'd have to like search specific groups and stuff like that. So Sunday Marketplace is meant to bring some of that together, make it more centralized and more ran by, you know, a small business as opposed to Facebook. Unfortunately, Facebook has nasty algorithms that don't let the small guy kind of get that type of exposure. I digress though. So this sheet is just about done. I'm wrapping the last end up. All right, just about done. Nothing too exact or specific up here, just getting it tied so I can dye it. I'll be dyeing this tonight or later on this today. It'll take me a little while, so I probably will not video it. Unless I get lots of requests. Or one request. Okay. There we go. So this is a fitted sheet tied up in a mandala. You never saw me cut this sinew. It is a one piece of sinew tie. It has a defined dream catcher point. It's got the first offset point, or the first main point, offset point, several main points on the mandala, a defined a circle at the end right here. So this is going to be a circle. And then this is the last point, and the rest of this is just the sides and underneath of the fitted sheet. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to give me a ping, private message, or a comment on here. Really appreciate you guys watching. This is fun. Takes me a little bit longer to do when I'm videotaping it, but hey, hopefully you got a little bit out of it. And again, there's a lot of people have been asking about how I get the definition and the tight dream catcher. And if you look at this, this is super tight. Again, I'm pulling it really tight, and I'm using the table, and I'm keeping everything flat. So Aaron Whalen, Ron Norwood, Jackson Miner, you know, who else does the amazing Dan Dema. You know, they're all pulling super tight and you know, getting that type of definition, and that's how you do it. So thanks, guys. Again, maybe I'll turn on the video for the die session. That may happen a little bit later on today. Right on. Thank you.